Hello YouTube friends, and welcome to Grow Money Seeds, a channel about building wealth and managing your money. In this video, we're going to discuss why you should not put your money in the bank and why this could actually cost you money. So let's get to it. In case you think the description of this video is incorrect, it is correct, and it does say don't put your money in the bank. Some of you might be thinking, that is one of the stupidest things I've heard. But hang around to the end of the video and this will all make a lot more sense. We've all heard the saying that cash is king, and it is important to have some cash on hand. But this amount of cash should be equal to about 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses, which is called an emergency fund. This is discussed in a previous video, which you can watch by clicking here. Emergency funds need to be quickly accessible, so this money should be put into an interest-bearing account at the bank. Other than this, any extra cash should not be put into the bank, as cash has a big problem. What is that problem? It's a word called inflation. Let's do some research and see what some of my friends know about inflation. Okay, so let's ask our 3 questions. Okay, Chris, so first question is, what is inflation?
It's the degree to which your money decreases in value over time.
Do you know how much inflation is?
Probably close to 5%.
If you had some extra money, what would you do with the money to save it? Where would you put it?
Probably in property. It would be nice to have a residual income.
Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So first question is, what is inflation?
Well, it's obviously the increase of goods.
And do you know how much inflation is?
Not at the moment.
If you had extra money, if you had some money, what would you do with that money to save it? Where would you put it?
Well, I had this discussion many of times, but I think I'll purchase gold or silver.
Perfect.
So then.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
What is inflation?
That's when the prices are just going up and up and up.
Okay. Do you know how much inflation is?
No.
If you had some extra money, where would you put that money to save the money? What would you do with it? Where would you save it?
I would definitely save it, yeah.
Okay, but where would you put it?
What's the place that you...
Alan Gray?
Alan Gray,
Okay,
Arthur.
you'd invest
Alan
it.
Gray, yeah.
Okay, right, great. Thank you. From those responses, it seems we sort of know what it is, but it's really important for us to understand it in a little bit more detail. So, what is inflation? This is the rate at which the price of goods and services increase over a period of time. This is also known as the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. In simple terms, it means the price of that coffee that you bought today is going to cost you more in the future. Or the money you have in your wallet today is going to be worth less in the future. Why do we have inflation? There's 3 main reasons for inflation. The first is something called the demand pull effect. This happens when there's a high demand for a product or service. Think of it like this. If there's a new gadget on the market and everyone wants to buy it, it'll drive up the price and make it more expensive. The second is the cost push effect. This happens when the production costs increase, and this results in a more expensive finished product. An example of this would be if the price of electricity goes up, then manufacturing costs go up, and the finished product will also be more expensive. The third is built-in inflation. To keep up with inflation in goods, people demand higher salaries, which increases the costs of labor and this will again increase the price of goods and services. How is inflation calculated? This is calculated by adding the costs of a predetermined basket of goods and services over a period of time. Inflation is not a bad thing, as it generally means there's more money in the economy, and this drives economic growth. A good rate of inflation is about 2%. Very high inflation is not a good thing, as people's salaries are not able to keep up with rising costs. And very low inflation is also not a good thing, as this means there's not much money in the economy, and this can lead to a recession. So, why do we need to know about the rate of inflation? Knowing the rate of inflation lets us make some informed decisions. For example, inflation might be 5%, and you're due an annual increase at work. If your employer only gives you an increase of 2%, this effectively means that you're earning 3% less than the previous year. If you own a house and the property prices are increasing by 5% each year and inflation is 5%, then your house hasn't gone up in value. It's the same as it was last year. It also gives us a true reflection of how investments are performing. Again, if inflation is 5% and you have a return of 7%, then you've had a net gain of 2%. So, what's the best way to protect or hedge against inflation? Interestingly, stocks are generally the best way to fight inflation. Companies need to account for the price increases of raw materials, production costs, and salaries, and this all gets factored into the price of the stock. So let's take a look at some data that shows how investing in the stock market can help you grow your wealth and beat inflation. If we look at the S&P 500, which is an index that measures the performance of the top 500 companies on the American Stock Exchange, we can see that since its inception in 1926, it's given an average annual return of 9.8% or 6% after inflation. Therefore, if we invested $10,000 into the stock market 20 years ago, the return on investment today, with no additional contributions, would be just over $32,000 after inflation. This is a net gain of $22,000. Bearing this in mind, the interest on a basic savings account in South Africa is about 3%, and inflation is about 5%. This means that if you put your money into the bank here, you'd be losing about 2% of your money each year. Simply put, if we invested the same $10,000 into the bank 20 years ago, we'd have a final amount just over $6,600 after inflation and a net loss of $3,400. And this is why you should not put your money in the bank unless the bank can give you a higher return than inflation. Summing it up, there's various investments that will beat inflation, like property, commodities, and as mentioned, the stock market. I'd highly recommend that if you have any extra cash, diversify into different products which will spread your risk and protect against inflation. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and especially don't put your eggs in the bank. If you found the content of this channel useful and would like to be notified when a new video is released, then please don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. This will help the channel to grow and hopefully help other people achieve their financial independence. Thanks for watching.